Monday, February 12th, 2024, Maplewood City Council meeting. I wanted to start off our meeting tonight thanking our staff, thanking our faith community, specifically thanking in our Public Safety Department, Barb Johnson and Sergeant Gabriel, and then all the Maplewood staff who donated to our winter wear drive. We collected 600 coats and 500 hats, scarves, and mittens that were distributed at the end of January by the Salvation Army Lakewood Worship and Service Center, which is really pretty impressive. We know that there are members in our community who could really use the winter wear, and we really, I would just want to thank everybody for their generosity and for their kind donations, because that really makes a lot of difference for members in our community. I also wanted to announce something fun that's coming up this week. I've had several residents call and fill me in that our local, well, it's a television show, Twin Cities Live. It's on at 3 o'clock. It's focusing on Maplewood this week. And today they had a feature concerning Angus meats, and they were cooking bolognese in the Twin City Live kitchen, I guess, and they are going to be broadcasting live from Maplewood on Thursday at the 5-8 Club. So they were asking on the Twin Cities Live if anyone would be interested in appearing as a, part of the background when they're broadcasting from the 5-8 Club. Please show up. The show starts at 3 o'clock, so you want to come a little bit earlier than that. But that's kind of fun that Maplewood is going to be highlighted on our local, it's Channel 5, I believe, isn't it? Is it 5? Okay. So anyway, that's kind of a fun thing to look forward to. I hope some of you and even council members can get down to the 5-8 Club and be in the background as they talk about Maplewood. So let's start with our Pledge of Allegiance tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you please do our roll call for us?
Councilmember Cave?
Here.
Councilmember Juniman? Councilmember Lee?
Present.
Councilmember Villavicencio? Here. And Mayor Abrams?
Here as well. Thanks, Christine. Well, members, is there a motion to approve our agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
By Cave, seconded by Lee, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Approval of the minutes. First, we have the January 22nd, 2023 council workshop meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So move.
Approval.
Second.
Seconded by Lee, the motion to approve the January 22nd City Council workshop meeting minutes. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to our January 22nd, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. I think this should say 2024. Yeah.
Both of them. Yeah.
I just noticed that now. Anyway, yeah, the January 22nd, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the January 22nd, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We move on to appointments and presentations, administrative presentations, the council calendar update. City Manager Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Upcoming items for the workshop or council meeting include, I had in the report that we would have an update on the Purple Line from the Met Council staff on February 26th. And in talking with staff, they are suggesting that that be moved to April 22nd. So they have more time to talk to the parties that would be impacted by the north end point for the BRT. So they're going to come now on April 22nd. And other than that, I don't have Too much to add, other than at the last meeting, I was asked to look into the cost of raising seasonal and part-time staff to $15 an hour as opposed to $13. You'll see in the staff report G6 our recommended action on that, and if you have any questions, we can address it at that time. Otherwise, that's all I had for this evening under the calendar, unless you have other items you'd like staff to work on your behalf.
Council members, is there anything?
Okay, thank you.
Seeing none, then we move on to our strategic plan update with Lois Knudsen.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Lois Knudsen, and I am the Senior Administrative Manager. Part of my job is overseeing our city's strategic plan, and part of that includes reporting to you every quarter on our progress. So this is the report for the fourth quarter of 2023. As you can see here, we are at 77% progress. You may think we ended the year wrong, are we at 100%? Well, some of those items are yearly items, which should be finished in a year, and other items are ongoing items that take multiple years to complete. So 77%, we're doing pretty well. There are just over 9% of our items that have some disruption, and those are a lot of minor disruptions, things we've been dealing with for several quarters. Acela issues in community development, the software conversion in finance has caused a little delay in some of the financial reporting that they're doing. We are working on developing a system to rate our facilities, and there have been some delays in that because we're trying to figure out, once we have this system, how are we going to fund it? And then the Purple Line project affects some of our development projects, and that is still on hold as they are continuing to look at route options. Our mission and value statement. The mission of the city is to sustainably provide health, safety, and quality of life for all. Our values: we are a family-friendly employer and community. We strive for excellence through innovation and quality in the delivery of services. We are committed to community collaboration and public engagement that are respectful and inclusively aware. We are fiscally responsible stewards of all public funds. We strive to have respectful communication, and we recognize professionalism and public policy that promotes strengths, courageous problem solving, a commitment to the environment, and respect for our community. And those values are echoed and mirrored by our 6 strategic priorities, which are community inclusiveness, financial and asset management, environmental stewardship, integrated communication, operational effectiveness, and targeted redevelopment. Now, since it is the year end, I'm going to do this format a little differently than I usually do. I usually go through each of the strategic priorities and just give you some highlights of each one. But since it's the year end, I went to the department heads and I asked them, what are the major accomplishments within your department for 2023? Some of those are things that are actually part of our plan, performance measures within the plan, and others are things that aren't necessarily called out in the plan, but everything directly ties back to the plan. So we're going to go through this department by department, and first we'll start with the administration department. So in 2023, the city completed their first compensation study, so that was a big accomplishment. And then in response to that study, labor contracts were signed with all 7 unions. Most of them run through 2025. All employees took part in cultural agility training. And then several of our staff participated in the People of Color Job Fair. And that was an opportunity to actually do some active recruitment with people who are looking for jobs. And they've created a mailing list so we can actually do some follow-up with those people as new jobs become available. There was continued support and engagement with employees in both wellness and mental health. And there's ongoing onboarding that's taking place with new employees through our Maplewood Ambassador program. So all new employees, within about 6 months of when they start, go through the MAP program. And what that is it's something to help them to learn about the city, not just their department where they're working every day, but to learn about city operations as a whole, what other departments do, what the city's strategic plan is, how our budget works, things like that. So that's the administration department. The communications department. They worked together with public safety and public works and created multilingual parking rules flyers in 5 different languages. They had a tremendously successful series of live broadcasts from their Santa parade on December 9th. And I'm told that those spots reached more than 5,000 people, with about 1,400 of those actively watching significant portions of the broadcast. We garnered about 15 new followers to our public safety Facebook page as a result of that. And each broadcast featured events happening at that stop, as well as a preview of approximate times of when each neighborhood throughout Maplewood could expect the parade and Santa to arrive. Communications worked hard to ensure that the move of community development from 1902 down to City Hall was communicated to our residents. They did things such as contacting businesses, warning them ahead of time so that they come to the right building when they're trying to get help with their permits and things. We did social media posts, spots in the Maplewood Living, and prominent web placement. Chad Burgo and Joe Sheeran also undertook a complete redo of the signs around City Hall, the campus, to help. First of all, they made the fonts bigger so they're more visible as people are driving in their cars. And then they also replaced up and updated all the City Hall signage so that as people walk in the door, they could easily tell where community development was. And now to the Community Development Department. One of their big things was they moved from the 1902 building down to City Hall, and that is all complete and taken care of. As part of the move, they purged a lot of their paper documents and modified their digital filing system to streamline storage and prepare for migration to SharePoint. They completed a comprehensive zoning code reorganization and update. They secured $2.8 million in Met Council and deed grant funds for housing development projects throughout the city. They issued over 4,900 building and trade permits, and the approximate value of that construction is $160 million. Now, when I asked Community Development Director Parr, she gave me lots of numbers. So I included a slide called Community Development by the Numbers. They have had a very busy year in 2023. 9,158 inspections, approximately 2,000 virtual inspections, 1,117 electrical inspection sign-offs. The CDRB reviewed 9 development projects. The Planning Commission reviewed 10 CUPs and 4 variances. There were 5 lot divisions approved within Maplewood, and staff prepared 18 zoning letters. There were 105 new housing units approved, 72 units of senior housing approved, and they were able to catch up on their backlog of roofing inspections that were a result of the hailstorm we had in May 19th of 2022, I believe. And then rental licensing was also very busy. There were 83 new applications, as well as 411 renewals. The health inspector was kept busy permitting and inspecting. 35 vendors took part in the International Night Market, and 43 vendors took part in the Asian Night Market. Both of those are very big community outreach events that were very successful this year. Finance Department. They went live with new financial software system called Enterprise ERP, and that is what staff uses when we have to pay bills, when we have to process our credit card statements. And finance has done a great job, especially Lauren, with training all of us and answering all of our continued questions as we're learning the new software. They started converting our payroll software system also to Enterprise ERP, and that is scheduled to go live in July. But in preparation for that, there's lots of behind-the-scenes work going on because we have so many employees. We have 7 different unions. We have the universal pay plan, different health care plans, so it's very complicated, but they're scheduled to go live in July. Finance was a huge help in implementing the universal wage scale in payroll. They received the 2022 Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. They received the 2023 Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. And now on to the fire department. The employees in the fire department averaged 35 hours each of community outreach throughout the year. They responded to 7,973 fire and EMS calls, and that is a 5.32% increase over 2022 and a 16.73% increase over the past 5 years. Fire was able to add 3 full-time employees in '23 to address firefighter mandations. And if you don't know what a mandation is, it occurs when the department staffing falls below a minimum staffing level, and thus they are required to call in employees to come back in because there are minimum levels of employees we need on at all times. So because of adding the new employees, there was a 23% reduction in those mandations from 22 to 23. And then we have a fire and EMS cadet program. And for the first time, one of the participants in that program has now been hired as a full-time firefighter. We received a grant for $42,490 from AFG and FEMA, and that is to purchase SCBA fill stations. And in case you're wondering what that is, an SCBA is a device worn by firefighters to protect their lungs and face during emergency calls, and they involve cylinders which have to be refilled. So now we have a fill station at both the North Station and the South Station to help with making sure there's always equipment available for that. We sent 2 of our full-time employees who were firefighter EMTs, went to paramedic school. Chief Mondor received the Chief Fire Officer designation from the Center of Public Safety Excellence. 2 of our staff presented at the State Fire Chiefs Association Annual Conference in Duluth, and those were Captain Brad Davison, who talked about our fire and EMS cadet program, and Fire Marshal Jerry Novak, who shared about our connection with the Karen community through targeted community risk reduction efforts and community events. And that also involved some translation of several of our documents to the Karen language. 19 employees were recognized with life-saving awards, and 2 employees were recognized with the Stork Award for delivering a baby outside of a hospital setting. So another big year for the fire department as well. The IT department, they completed the Axon Fleet camera system implementation, and that's a system that's in all of our police vehicles. They migrated all city mobile phone and data plans to T-Mobile. All city phones and tablets have been moved to a new mobile device management system, and they were a huge help in assisting with the staff moves, helping to tear down and reset up all the workstations to make sure infrastructure was there for all staff ready to go once they were moved. They also completed a security system improvement project in our police and fire departments. The police department, they enacted a drone program and also added an interior drone, so that can, I guess, fly up and down the halls of the police station, as well as going into buildings where they would need to have some sort of interior surveillance. They gained a second grant-funded auto theft detective. They received a grant-funded traffic officer. And they've been rebooting the MAC, the Multicultural Advisory Committee, with many new members. A mobile command vehicle was purchased. Many officers were recertified in pursuit intervention training. And they received initial funding to hire architects for the public safety training facility. And now on to the Public Works Department. All staff were involved in the review and updating of the Public Works strategic plan measures in 2023. There were 246 tree removals, many of those from emerald ash borer. But with those 246 being removed, another 375 new trees were planted throughout the city. The PCA rating, that's the Pavement Condition Index. The goal is to have at least 70% of the streets over 70. and there are now 73.5% over 70. And that is also due to completion of 4.12 miles of improvements during '23. 189,558 of sewer mains were cleaned. Fleet staff performed 307 preventative and repair tasks to help keep our fleet operating smoothly. And facility staff tracked and responded to 171 help desk tickets. And that's in addition to their day-to-day workload. Park staff, they made some changes to their rental system for both for facility and fields, and that's increased efficiency for staff as well as making it easier for the public. Parks and Natural Resources offered 13 outreach events in 2023, and several of the Public Works divisions were successful in obtaining grants, and these were related to things such as trees, open space and park restoration, street improvements, and water quality improvements. The 2022-23 winter saw a record amount of snow. However, the 23-24 winter is much milder, so we have not been out plowing and spending the money on that as much, and it's also allowing a lot of extra time for our staff to work on other things such as tree removals. What's next? Well, in the next few weeks, as I do every year at the beginning of the year, I meet with all of the departments individually. We like to have a number of employees present at that from different levels. We look at the plan, the performance measures. We evaluate what's working. We think of things we might want to add, things that might not be working, that we might change. So that's coming up. One thing I'm going to work on doing is encouraging more staff to have action initiatives, low-level measures under their performance measures, because that's what drives that progress bar. So if we can have a few work plan steps under each performance measure, it just makes the plan a little more transparent. Are there any questions?
Great report. I have to say I like the way that this was presented. We have quite a large-size audience here tonight, and this is the kind of work that Lois does for us. The council sets our strategic objectives. They are on the back of our council packet. Everything that we do is measured by the strategic objectives that we set, and then Lois helps with our Invisio program, where we actually chart and keep track of, we measure how are we doing in terms of meeting our strategic objectives. Lois, you certainly know this much more in depth. Because we have so many people here, this is something that I think the city can be very proud of, that we don't just work and, you know, in some kind of ambiguous fashion. We actually set objectives and goals, and then we measure how are we doing on those goals, which I think is very unique. Not a whole lot of cities do that, and a lot of this certainly falls on Lois. So do you want to kind of explain a little bit, because we have so many residents that are here tonight?
So the strategic plan, the council sets the priorities, and then the plan has several different levels. The key one is performance measures. Those are all the different things we're tracking and measuring. And we really like to get input from all the departments. They determine what they want their performance measurements to be. But we also like input from even the lower level on the ground staff, because they're the ones who are doing the work. They can help us say, if we want to achieve this measure, what do we need to do? So that's part of those upcoming meetings, and it's actually been very effective.
It's a wonderful thing, and I think it certainly helps us. It knows where we're going so that we can plan for that, but it also knows how it tells us, it's a report card for us. How are we doing with all of that? Councilmember Cave.
Just a comment to echo on what the mayor said. Great presentation. And I really liked how you had each department head go over the end of the year. That was really insightful. Thank you, Lois.
And just for the rest of the people that are here, the council gets reports on a quarterly basis so that we know what kinds of things are happening, whether or not we've got interruptions or we've completed goals. We get quarterly reports. What you just heard was our 2023 report. There were a lot of things going on in the city last year. So thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Just another big shout out to all of our staff from the front door when you walk into City Hall, to the city manager. Thank you all so very much. You all make us look really good up here, so thank you so very much. I do also want to let all the residents know that this report is actually available online, so you can see it yourself at home on our website. You could track it as a resident too, so it's not just available for us, but also available for folks in our city to look at.
Very good point, thanks. Council members, would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to accept the strategic plan report for fourth quarter of 2023.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Juniman, the motion to accept the strategic plan report for fourth quarter of 2023. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, thank you, Lois. That was a great report. Next, we have a resolution of appreciation for our retiring city manager, Melinda Coleman. And I had hoped that this wouldn't be happening during the time that I'm mayor. But it's here, and, you know, we're not going to tie you to the chair.
Tempting though it may be.
Maybe we will. Mr. Darrow, you've got the report on this. I guess it's kind of self-explanatory. What I'm going to do, we're making a resolution basically of appreciation for City Manager Coleman. I'm going to ask Kathy Juniman, our most senior council member, if she would read this. My voice was fine at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and now it's not so fine. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Been doing a lot of talking.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Darrow, is there anything that you need to tee up for this?
No, Mayor and
Okay.
Council.
There you go.
My pleasure, Mayor. Thank you. Whereas Melinda Coleman began working for the City of Maplewood as Community Development Director in 1995, rising to City Manager in 2015. And whereas Melinda Coleman led several community development projects to expand the city's housing stock and commercial corridors while preserving large tracts of open space to bolster the city's outdoor recreational opportunities and protect its natural resources. And whereas Melinda Coleman oversaw several major transitions of the fire EMS department to ensure the city maintained a high-quality response to a changing community demographic. And whereas Melinda Coleman has dedicated significant time and resources to improve employee professional development, compensation, and wellness initiatives to attract and retain a highly professional staff. And whereas Melinda Coleman has served as a mentor, teacher, and leader for scores of local government professionals and has built a strong line of succession within the organization. And whereas Melinda Coleman has implemented and grew the Strengths Finder program so that all staff understand what motivates their colleagues and how they work best. And whereas Melinda Coleman has served as a fiscal steward of public funding, ensuring a balance between necessary resources to maintain a high-quality community at a value for Maplewood taxpayers. And whereas Melinda Coleman's fiscal stewardship has positioned the city for efficient day-to-day operations and to withstand future financial uncertainty. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved for, on behalf of the City of Maplewood, Minnesota, and its citizens, that Melinda Coleman is being extended our gratitude and appreciation for her professionalism and dedicated service for the past 21 years. Adopted by the Maplewood City Council on February 12th, 2024.
Thank you.
It's too bad she didn't do anything.
We'll still have to, well, let's, I will gladly make the motion to approve the resolution of appreciation for City Manager Melinda Coleman.
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the resolution of appreciation for City Manager Melinda Coleman. Is there any further discussion, council members? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. And Melinda, I just want to take a quick second to thank you for everything you've done for the city of Maplewood. As a first-year council member, you made it very easy for me to access information, materials, and all the crazy questions that I always came to you with. And I would call Melinda at 5:59 last minute or 6:59, and she would answer. Or on the weekends when I send an email, I have to send her a follow-up email to say, Melinda, no emails this weekend. Just this past weekend, she responded with an email, and I almost sent her a nasty email to let her know she's not supposed to be on her email because she's supposed to be on vacation. She ended up not going. But, words can't describe how much the hard work that you've done here for our city. not just the council, but our residents. We appreciate you and everything that you've done for us. And you certainly taught me a lot. And I was hoping to learn a little bit more from you. Maybe might have to take Councilmember Juniman's suggestion to tie you down to the chair for a little bit. But, but thank you for everything, Melinda. Know that I appreciate you. The city of Maplewood appreciate you, and you'll be missed here.
Councilmember Cave.
I'll make this short, but Melinda, you have been such an instrumental part of Maplewood and the positiveness that it has become today. You have shown the citizens, the staff, just you've created such a positive place, and you've really worked hard, and it shows. You have been a pleasure to work with on the city council. We work with our city manager so close, and I'm so not looking forward to you leaving. You've brought just so much positive here. You have to be just so proud. You've done so many things that we can't even, list, and we're going to miss you.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember, I didn't see who, I think Councilmember Villavicencio was next.
Melinda, I just want to thank you for your contributions to Maplewood. And, when we were talking about the mission of Maplewood being about the quality of life, I think of you, because the quality of life of Maplewood, you've brought what that should mean to local government. So thank you for your contributions.
And Councilmember Juniman.
Well, of all the people here, I have to say I'm probably the only one who can say I barely remember what it was like before Melinda Coleman was here. I remember when you came as Community Development Director, and I was a lowly activist at that point, and you even helped me then when I had questions about things. And from the time I started on the council to now, you've always been a source of really accurate information and being willing to share with me whatever I needed. And I echo what everybody has said. You have brought this city so far, and we are in such a positive light thanks to you. There's no way to thank you sufficiently, so all I can say is thank you, and I wish you were staying.
You bet. As mayor, I've had the opportunity to work very closely with Melinda, and I have to say that her leadership is something that I came to appreciate so much. When I don't know of many city mayors that went through a global pandemic followed by a summer of social unrest. I don't believe Maplewood has ever had to go through a curfew and where the mayor had to have executive orders. And I have to say that Melinda was a rock star leader in helping our residents, in helping our staff, in helping continue to deliver services, despite the fact that we were in a pandemic. And she did it with a great deal of grace and with calm, and making really good fiscal decisions. And some of those decisions were really very hard to make. And I have to say that Melinda's style was always to collect as much information as she could, to advise people, and then really the decisions, besides the ones that the council makes, she is the CEO of the city. And Melinda made those decisions with compassion and intelligence, using her experience. And I think Maplewood came out of the pandemic in a much better shape than many other cities did. And so it's been kind of nice to have you around when we're not in a pandemic and where we're not trying to deal with some of those huge issues that really were just. Who knew that was going to happen? Right. But it was a great experience for you. It was a great experience for the council. And I have to say that Melinda, one of her fabulous skills is that she's got the ability to pivot in terms of, okay, we have to shut the city down. How are we going to continue with the DMV? How are we going to make sure that people can work from home? What do we need to do to keep staff safe? What do we need to do to keep morale up and keep things running here at the city? Because the city is responsible for so many of the basic functions, from public safety to our parks. I mean, we thought about, even then, I appreciate what my fellow council members have talked about, but maintaining our city parks so that people could still go out and enjoy the city parks. That there was a huge burden in trying to keep things going, and Melinda did it with such grace, and she has really been a trusted advisor, and she will be greatly missed, but we are glad that she decided to spend many years of her public service right here in Maplewood. So I want to thank you. You've been fabulous to work with, so you will be missed.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a joke, because then I'll get over my emotions. Just a small one, not really a joke, but first of all, I want to know if I can fly the drone before I go. And also that just really simple math would tell you that I went to 500 of these. 500 city council meetings in 21 years. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And it's just fun that the last one we have a full agenda, so that's good. Thank you for having a whole agenda tonight. But more seriously, and I'm going to get really emotional, so if I do, forgive me. It's hard. I want to thank you guys for your kind words. Will you read this for me?
I don't think it'll have the same appeal.
All right. Thank you to the council and mayor for those kind words. It's been an honor to be the city manager. I hope my husband's watching. I know he's not. He's in a plane right now. But I'm going to have him watch this later so he can hear all these great things about me. He will be surprised, I think. Anyway, with your leadership and direction and support, we've accomplished much in 21 years that I've been here. I know that our work together has made a difference in the community, and we've been good stewards of city resources, and we've together made Maplewood a better place to live, work, play, and thrive. We wouldn't be in a position to do any of this amazing work without all the employees, and many of you are here tonight. I think that the strategic plan update that Lois gave us tonight really illustrates the dedication and professionalism of our staff. And when you see all those numbers, you're like, whoa, that was a lot of work in 1 year. So thank you to the employees. We wouldn't be doing any of this without you. I am grateful beyond words. And you can see it's working. I don't have the words. For my experiences.
unusual.
I know, I always have words. I'm going to draw up on my woo now here for just a couple of minutes. I'm grateful for my experiences here, and thank you all for believing in me. I will miss you all very much, but I also look forward to being retired. And tell me about your vacation plans. I know I got to touch base with Steiner because I hear you were just in Palm Springs, and I'm going there next month, so maybe you can tell me some good spots to go. So there's much to be looking forward to in my new adventures in retirement. Thank you all. I was only here a little bit ahead of you, so. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are moving on to our consent agenda. We have 9 items on the consent agenda. Would someone like to make
I
a
will
motion?
motion consent agenda items number G1 through G9.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman, consent agenda items G1 through 9. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Lee.
Mayor, can we pull G5 for a separate vote? And then just had a quick question about G1 before we vote on it. So,
Okay. Then let's do the Councilmember Lee, you had a question about G1.
Yep.
Mr. Rube, this is yours.
Just had a question about G1. I had a quick conversation with Joe right before the council meeting started, so I just wanted to see if you were able to just find the discrepancy really quick.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. The discrepancy that he's mentioning is under the accounts payable listings. Checks number 120481 through 120515. It states that the amount of those checks equals $227,891.86. But based off of the detail that's attached behind, the actual amount of those checks total out to $3,893,557.91. So there's just an error on the front cover.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you wanted to pull G5? Okay.
So then we have to restate the motion. Well, do we have to restate the motion?
The motion was already made and seconded, and so we can't pull an item from it. Mr. Beatty, would you weigh in, please?
Madam Mayor, Council, you're right. There is a motion and a second. If you want to pull an item, then there needs to be a separate motion and approval to pull that item. Then I would suggest a vote on the other remaining items, come back and vote separately on them on item 5.
Okay, so did you want to make a second motion to amend?
Yes. A motion to amend the previous motion to pull G5 from the first, sorry, from the first motion.
Want Mr. Beatty to help you?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, Council, I think the motion then should be to approve items 1 through 4 and 6 through 9.
Well, but I think we need to first, we already have this motion out there and some,
Sorry, to amend the motion to only deal with items 1 through 4 and 6 through 9, then there could be a subsequent motion to approve or to consider item 5.
okay. Is that your motion?
Did it, yep.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion?
Second. Oh, actually, sorry.
You can't second your own
Yes.
motion.
Yeah, I was going to say second.
Yes.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Villavicencio, a motion to amend the previous motion concerning consent agenda items, amending it to only cover G1 through 4 and 6 through 9 and deal with 5 separately. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Nay. The motion fails. So we're back to our motion with consent agenda items G1 through 9. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, please mark down that Councilmember Lee has abstained. It appears that the motion was 4-1. Is that correct? Okay, 4-1. All right, so our consent agenda item has passed. Moving on to public hearings, we have 2024 Maplewood street improvements. And Mr. Love and Mr. Jarosh, these are your topics for tonight.
Yes, Mayor and Council, good evening. As you mentioned, tonight we have John Jarosh, our Assistant City Engineer, who will be providing the presentation. Also, we have our project engineer, Tyler Strong, who will be available. He's a gentleman with his hand up there. He'll be available after this item is done for any questions or, if residents have any questions, he'll be available out in the atrium area after the item is finished. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to talk to you guys about the 2024 Maplewood Street Improvements, City Project 23-08. The streets included in this project are shown on the right-hand side of the screen. We broke this project into 2 separate areas, the first of which is on the top of the screen. We're referring to as the Cypress Maplewood Drive area. That consists of the streets shown in black, generally along the Trunk Highway 61 corridor between Jarvis Avenue and Beam Avenue on the north. And then the East Shore Drive area, which consists of the neighborhood highlighted in black, just to the north and east of Lake Phelan and south of Frost Avenue, as well as that upside-down T-looking area of Sophia Avenue and Ide Street over towards Wakefield Lake. The streets in this project area are part of the currently approved capital improvement plan. They total 4.3 miles in length and have an average pavement condition index rating of just 32 out of 100. So as a reminder, that pavement condition index is on a scale from 0 to 100, 100 being a brand new road, 0 being nothing left, essentially a gravel road. These streets, again, average just a 32 out of 100. That pavement has essentially deteriorated to the point where it's no longer cost-effective to maintain it or patch it. Some of the streets in the project area completely lack curb and gutter, mainly in that East Shore Drive portion of the project. There's a number of storm sewer and sanitary sewer segments that are in need of upgrade and expansion on certain project streets. And St. Paul Regional Water Service has also identified about 2,600 linear feet of water main that is in need of replacement. Taking a look at what type of improvement we're proposing for which street, those streets shown in green on the screen are part of what we're calling the pavement rehabilitation. So we're really focusing on replacing the failed street pavement. So that includes all of that Cypress Maplewood Drive area portion of the project, as well as East Shore Drive from Frost Avenue down to where it bends, turns down towards the lake, and the entrance drive over towards the boat launch. Those streets shown in red are proposed for full reconstruction, and that mainly consists of that East Shore Drive area, as well as Sophia Avenue and Ide Street over towards Wakefield. Going a little more in depth into what those types of improvement include, those streets shown in green on that previous slide, the pavement rehabilitation streets, we're proposing to reclaim those streets, essentially rototilling up the roadway, grinding up the street pavement, mixing it with the aggregate base below to create a new road base. After that is shaped and compacted, we remove the excess reclaimed material to account for the new pavement. We install 2 new layers of asphalt pavement, replace any structurally damaged concrete curb and gutter, the kind of curb that's no longer going to properly support the roadway. We'd replace that with the project. We'd make repairs to the existing storm sewer system, just minor repairs needed in this area. We'd replace any outdated sanitary sewer castings, so that's the manhole lids and the frame that they sit on. We bring those up to current standards, and that helps prevent inflow from stormwater down into the sanitary sewer system. We'll also look at, in conjunction with St. Paul Water, installing sacrificial anodes onto the existing water main, and those are essentially material that's attached to the water main, and it takes the corrosion instead of the pipe, so it prolongs the life of the pipe. In addition to that, we'd restore any driveways or boulevard areas disturbed as part of the project. Those full reconstruction streets, those ones that were highlighted in red on the couple slides back, those ones we're proposing to fully remove and replace the pavement, any aggregate base material that might be below the road, as well as any poor subgrade soils beneath that. We'd install 2 new layers of asphalt pavement, new concrete curb and gutter, and make repairs and expand that storm sewer system to make sure we're getting the runoff off the roadway and down to the pipes below where we can convey it to the ponds and wetlands in the area. In addition to that, we'd install water quality features, things like underground infiltration systems, as well as the residential rainwater garden program. And what those do is they're going to remove excess nutrients from the stormwater runoff, as well as reduce runoff reaching Lake Phelan. We're going to look at replacing those outdated sanitary sewer castings and make any repairs to the mains or services that are needed. We're looking at replacing that 2,600 feet of cast iron water main, and installing sacrificial anodes on the water main as well to prolong the life of the system. And we look at restoring any driveways or boulevards disturbed as part of the project. In addition to that, what we do with all of our projects is utilize the Living Streets policy to help guide the design of the streets in the project area. Looking at the communication that's happened thus far, we sent out an informational packet back in November of last year that included an introduction to the project, project location map, a frequently asked questions brochure, as well as information on the proposed assessments. We held a neighborhood meeting, 2 neighborhood meetings actually, back in December of last year. Those included an introduction to the project, a scope of the project, a project timeline, introduced the cost and funding sources that happen with these projects, information on assessments, as well as how residents will be communicated throughout the process. In addition to that, we implemented the Input ID web tool. That's an online mapping tool that residents can use to comment on the project. It's a social media type program that allows residents to comment, provide likes, dislikes, things like that on other residents' comments as well. We held the second neighborhood meeting last week that provided an update from that first neighborhood meeting, as well as answered any questions leading up to tonight's public hearing. In addition to that, we have a property owner survey on the project webpage, and that asks for additional information from area residents in that East Shore Drive portion of the project. Some of the things we heard from area residents were concerns with speeding, especially along East Shore Drive, concerns of speeding, volumes of traffic, as well as pedestrian safety along East Shore Drive. After taking that into consideration, working with the design team, we are proposing to narrow East Shore Drive from that existing 30 to 32 feet wide down to 26 feet in width to help constrict that corridor, make it feel a little tighter, and promote slower vehicle speeds. In addition to that, we're looking at doing all that narrowing off the lake side of the roadway to provide more boulevard space between the trail and the roadway to provide a little bit more of a factor of safety, as well as to provide additional space for future expansion of that trail. Some area residents expressed concerns over losing those mature boulevard trees that are present along many of the project streets out there. First, the city views those trees as an asset, and we're going to design that project to save as many of those trees as possible. Some exceptions to that includes the boulevard ash trees that we're going to be removing all those within the right-of-way due to the impacts of the emerald ash borer, as well as any hazardous trees, or we're going to take a look to make sure there's no hazardous trees up against the roadway. In addition to that, some area residents noted the need for additional street lighting in the project area. And all the project streets are going to be reviewed during the design to make sure that the streets are meeting our current city policy as far as street lighting is concerned. The policy currently calls for street lights at street intersections, major bends in the road, or dead ends, cul-de-sacs, things like that. Some area residents also noted some drainage concerns, localized water ponding, maybe in their boulevard. We're going to review all those areas as well during the design to make sure those areas are corrected to the extent possible. In total, this project is estimated to cost just under $11 million, with the project funding from a variety of sources shown on the screen. A few I want to highlight is the St. Paul Regional Water Services proposed to fund just over $1 million of the project, and that funding would go directly towards the water main system. Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District is proposing to fund right around $125,000, and that funding is proposed to go towards some flood mitigation efforts that the Watershed District wants to do in the project area. In addition to that, we have the assessments to the benefiting properties shown to cover just over $1.5 million of the total project cost. As you saw in that previous slide, the assessments are just one of the funding sources the city utilizes to finance these public improvement projects. Each year, the city council sets a maximum rate for assessments based on the type of improvement project. And then during the project design, the independent appraisal firm is hired to determine what that actual benefit is that the area properties receive from the improvements. And per Minnesota state statutes, that assessment amount cannot be more than the direct benefit those properties receive. So each year the city council sets that maximum rate, and then we test it during the design to make sure we're not over-assessing area residents. We're proposing that assessment hearing, if everything moves forward, to be held in September of this year, and that's the meeting at which area residents can voice their opinions directly to the council on the proposed assessments. Leading up to that assessment hearing, area residents will be mailed an official statement of their assessment, which includes the amount of their assessment, options for paying that assessment, the ability to defer or delay when that assessment has to be paid, as well as the right to object to their assessment. And leading up to that assessment hearing, staff would hold another neighborhood meeting to address any concerns over the proposed assessments. Looking at the project schedule, we're here tonight for that public hearing. This is the meeting at which area residents can provide direct input to the council on the proposed improvements. After receiving that input and considering it, the city council would vote on whether or not to order the public improvements. Assuming that happens, staff will continue design of the project, and we bring the plans before council in March of the year for approval and authorization to advertise for bids. We'd look at holding an award of contract in April of the year, and after that, we'd hold another neighborhood meeting to bring residents up to speed on the proposed construction process and what to expect throughout the construction season. Construction would occur from that late May, early June timeframe through November of the year. And we look at holding that assessment hearing in September of the year. With that, staff is recommending that the City Council hold the public hearing tonight. After taking in that public input, staff is recommending approval of the resolution ordering the improvements for the 2024 Maplewood Street Improvements City Project 23-08. And just a reminder that 4 affirmative votes are needed to approve this resolution tonight. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. DeRoche. I think my voice is getting lower as I'm speaking longer. Anyway, council members, do you have any questions for either Mr. Love or Mr. DeRoche? Councilmember Villavicencio.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, you mentioned about the street lighting. So are we improving any of the street lighting? Because I know that that's been an issue in that area for a long time.
Yes, Mayor, Council. So we are going to analyze all the entire project area to make sure that the street lighting is brought up to the current policies. So we're going to make sure there is street lighting at all the street intersections, major bends in the road, and then any dead ends or cul-de-sacs.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Then it is time for the public hearing. I'm going to open up the public hearing concerning 2024 Maplewood Street Improvements, City Project 23-08. We have several people who would like to speak. Jody Andrews is the first individual. We'll turn our timer on. You'll each have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Jody Andrews, 1768 East Shore Drive. We have a packet for you that we'll be sending via email, so hopefully that's okay. The one thing that we're very concerned of is mature trees. As was explained, they're very important to our environment, and we have 2 elm trees that are both 80-plus years old, and they survived the Dutch elm disease when it came through back in the 70s and 80s. So that is really, at the heart of our concerns. And we live on East Shore Drive, where a lot of the construction is happening. And the picture that they showed, right, is they're going to be digging, and these trees are fairly close to East Shore Drive. So if we could have an opportunity to have somebody come out and talk to us, look at the trees, and help us determine if they're going to be saved or harmed. And there is a manhole on our property right by our trees, and also a drain on the curb. So that's our main concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale?
I signed for the next.
Oh, okay. Kevin Schmidt?
I'm Kevin Schmidt, 1800 Phelan Place. First, I wanted to thank the city staff who's been working on this project, because I think they've done a great job of taking input. Really appreciated being able to talk to them. Unfortunately, I didn't go through all the other steps. I just talked to someone on city staff and have had a few thoughts since then. One is the lighting. One of the things that I see in our neighborhood is that the city puts in lighting and then does not maintain it. On Frost Avenue, the lights that were put in there have been out for 4 years. They were put in when that street improvement was done, and it appears that people keep pulling out the wires or whatever happens, but it's just never being fixed. So as you're going to be in this area, it'd be really nice if when you fix lighting that you figure out ways, number one, that the wires aren't all going to get ripped out, and number two, if you'd fix the stuff that's already there, that'd be really great. And then to Jody's concern about the tree, when the last time the city went through, before we lived in our property, the city put in a retaining wall in front of our house, cut off half a tree, and the roots of the tree, and it basically has been a dying tree for the last 20-plus years. And the city said they will take it this time, which is great, but to her point, this type of work can really destroy old trees, and I don't know what can be done to help that, but anything that you can do, I think, would be appreciated by everyone in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher, is it Hagel? I'm sorry. Hempel. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much. I have a couple points I want to bring up. I've lived 1120 Gordon. I've lived there about 28 years. During the entire time, we haven't had curbing or lights. It's very dark. I think our record for Halloween trick-or-treaters was 6, and that's when there was kids in the neighborhood, because no one's going to come up there because of the dark. So I think the lighting thing is really good, but I guess my personal feeling is I've lived my whole life there, and I'm going to be 62 years old, and there's a lot of people in that Gladstone Lookout Park section that are actually older. And so I kind of feel to a certain degree that we're kind of paying for the next generation of owners. We've lived without this stuff, and now we're going to pay for it for somebody else. I kind of understand it goes that way sometimes. I think one of the things that's unique about that neighborhood is it is pretty much older, and it's going to turn over in the next few years pretty quickly. So that's one thought. As far as narrowing East Shore Drive, I understand the concerns with the speed, but if you're looking at that section that turns around and goes out to Frost, people park there all the time, whether they're going to the senior citizen home or walking the lake. And then also as you come around in the summer, there's an ice cream truck that's always there. One of my concerns is if you narrow it too much, you're going to force people, even if they're driving slower, to come around that corner, see that ice cream truck, and have to swing out in the opposite lane. So either you're going to have to, I don't want to, I would be the last person to cause anyone to lose income, but you're going to have to make some arrangements with both that parking and that and where that ice cream truck parks. Otherwise, you're going to create a different problem. Again, and the other issue I had is that you're coming out in September with the assessment, and then the dollars are due in November. A lot of people, from the personal planning standpoint, something I'm involved in my career, do a lot of gifting. It's also the holidays, Christmas time. Some people are making end-year taxes. So that's right in the middle beginning of that fourth quarter where a lot of people have financial commitments that are lined up going out. So I don't know if you could either move the assessment, probably can't move it earlier, but maybe you give people an extended time, maybe after the new year, to make those assessments. And I guess just I hope that you review and see, are there some things that you can put off? And this might not be, the most financially logical or from an engineering standpoint. The sewer, for sure. I mean, if there's sewer issues, they've got to be taken care of. And I think everyone in the area knew when St. Paul on the other side was doing it that it was going to come. But some of the other aesthetic stuff, I'm just thinking, for those of us who lived without it this long, who aren't going to be living here maybe that much longer just because of age and physicality, I guess I'm just looking at that maybe personally, but other people may feel that same way. And then my last concern on those drainage ponds that you're looking at, probably a good idea, and I don't know the answer to this, that's why I'm asking. I just hope they aren't going to become mosquito breeding grounds, because Maplewood does a great job of spraying in the spring. They fly the helicopters over, and I'd hate for our neighborhood to be an area that's just, they can't control it because you got these ponds and people aren't keeping it up. And I was on the Zoom call, and they talked about that they have to be kept up. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at the public hearing? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Then I will close the public hearing for tonight. And Mr. Jarosz, I was taking some notes. Will you please respond to some of the concerns that were raised by residents during the public hearing?
Yes, Mayor, Council. So the first one, the mature boulevard trees, it's a very unique neighborhood. There's trees right up against the street, very old, very mature, nice trees. And we're going to do everything we can with the design to avoid damaging those trees. That being said, there is ash trees out there that we are going to have to remove. There is a number of trees that our maintenance staff have identified that are nearing the end of their useful life. They're deteriorating pretty rapidly. We're going to look at those carefully at whether or not they need to be removed or trimmed up. All that being said, we're not going to go into somebody's front yard and remove their tree without talking to them about it first. We're going to make sure it's an absolute necessity to take this tree out first, and we're going to talk to that resident and make sure that they're on board with that as well, outside of the ash trees, before we do that. And then towards the end of the project, we do offer, obviously, we're not going to be able to put in a mature tree like that, but we do offer replacement trees for all those folks that have a tree removed as part of the project. But in no case with this project are we looking at expanding or widening the street, so everything's going to happen within that existing street section, hopefully slightly narrowing it in most cases. But we're going to try to minimize the impact to area trees.
Thank you.
Yes. And we are more than happy to meet residents out at their property if they have something they want to talk about, so we can definitely do that. Street lighting, I don't know if, Steve, do you want to touch on the Frost Avenue lights?
Yes, Mayor and Council, as you know, the lights along Frost Avenue, these are lights that are owned by the city. They're a decorative style lighting that was put in to help spur redevelopment in the area. Those lights, very similar to what St. Paul is experiencing, is copper theft, as was mentioned. We've put copper wire in, only to have it very shortly taken back out. We have talked with St. Paul on what they've been doing as well. One of the things is the more you secure it, the more they damage it. And then next thing you know, you're having to replace the poles as well, because they're basically taking like a sledgehammer to the access port and breaking the pole apart. We have tried leaving them energized and have had people cut the energized wires in the ground. One of the things that would be different about the lighting in the neighborhood area is this would be our standard lighting that is put in by Excel. The poles are very different. They don't have the same access ports that the decorative ones have. So we haven't seen that issue happen with the Excel energy poles.
That's good to know. Thank you very much. I was at a meeting with a number of other mayors in our area, along with Congresswoman Betty McCollum today. And one of the things that she's working on from a federal level is this copper theft and what we can do about that. So she's looking into some of that from the federal perspective. So hopefully we can get something moving on that, because I know it is very frustrating. And let's see, Mr. Jarosz, would you please talk about the timing of the assessment? Because I know we've changed actually the timing of the assessment. Do you want to explain why we did that?
Yeah, Mayor, Council. Back at the beginning of the pandemic, we switched the assessment hearings from happening in the April timeframe, around the timeframe we're doing the award of contract. We moved that back to September of the year, and it gives it allows for the residents to have less time where that assessment is what am I trying to say here? Accumulating interest over that summer month. So we moved it to September of the year to reduce the amount of time that it's accumulated that interest. In addition to that, we do still offer the 30 days window after the assessment hearing where the assessment can be paid interest-free, any portion of that assessment. And then after that interest-free window, the remaining balance of the assessment gets certified to Ramsey County to be paid with the taxes, and that's over a 15-year period. So there is options for, it doesn't have to be paid this year. It can be paid over a period of time.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Council members, are there any other questions that you have? I think, Mr. Jarosz, that seemed to answer all the questions that I had, that I wrote down.
Mayor and Council, there was one more question about ponding.
Thank
John, do
you.
you want to maybe talk about a little bit of when we talk about flood mitigation, what we're actually speaking about?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, in regards to flood mitigation, the Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District identified there's a ponding area, wetland, to the east of East Shore Drive, to the north-south portion of East Shore Drive, and some backyard areas back there. As part of this project, we're going to look at reducing the amount of runoff that's reaching that ponding area, as well as providing a new overflow for that area so that it will no longer have the potential to impact structures in the future. I believe what the resident was referring to at the neighborhood meeting, we talked about the rainwater gardens. And what we want to do is when we install these rainwater gardens, we want to make sure they're put in a location where they're going to work. We need to make sure that they're drawing down within 48 hours. There's good soil underneath that's going to allow it to infiltrate in that relatively short time frame. And what that does is it allows, or it prevents mosquitoes from being able to breed in there and propagate in the area.
Thank you. I think that touched on all the notes that I took. All right, council members, it is up to us now. Would someone like to, does anyone have any questions for either Mr. Love or Mr. Jarosz? Okay, would someone like to make the motion, please?
Motion to approve the attached resolution ordering the improvement for the 2024 Maplewood Street Improvements, City Project 2308.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the attached resolution ordering improvements in 2024, known as City Project 23-08. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. It was unanimous. And your roads will look much better by the end of this construction season.
And they will work much better.
Excuse me, Mayor. I just want to again say that John Jarosz and Tyler will be back out in the atrium if anybody is here and wants to speak to them about the project.
Great, thanks for that reminder. If you'd like to speak with Mr. Jarosz, he'll be outside in the lobby. Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business. This is concerning the St. Paul Educational Foundation Communications Monopole at 1210 Sterling Street South. Mr. Martin, this is your topic.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If we could go to the overhead slides. We just have a handful of slides to guide through our discussion tonight. So this is an item that's being revisited as it was tabled at the December City Council meeting. So the first few will just set the basis as a reminder of what it is that we're talking about. So again, the applicant is proposing a new 190-foot communications monopole to house wireless equipment. The applicant is requesting approval for a conditional use permit, setback and height variances, and design review. As mentioned by the mayor, the property is owned and managed by St. Paul Educational Foundation. It's currently used as a ski jump. The site is guided by the city's comprehensive plan as open space and is zoned farm residential. A conditional use permit was not previously required for the existing telecommunications equipment as it's permitted on an existing tower. But now that the property owner is looking at a separate tower, that's where the CUP comes into play. So the ski jump structure has held that wireless equipment since 1997. The property owner had a design and structural analysis conducted and determined that in terms of future upgrades to the equipment, the ski jump could no longer hold it, and that's why they're looking at that telecommunications tower. So the tower itself would be located to the south of the ski jump. The tower would meet setbacks to the east, west, and north. All ground equipment setbacks are being met, and no screening is in place for ground equipment currently. So this leads us to really the two issues with the proposed tower that is at the council's desk tonight for discussion. It's the height itself. The tower height of 195 feet is being proposed. This is a residential zoning, so the limitation to that height is 125 feet. For context, non-residential areas, zoned areas, that height limit is then 175 feet. So the 195-foot tower then requires a 70-foot height variance. The other issue is the setback. The city code requires a setback of the height of the tower plus 25 feet from nearby residential structures. The proposed tower is 175 feet from the home. So as proposed, the applicant would need a 45-foot setback variance. They are also proposing a tower that would have a 50% breakaway fall zone. It should be noted that the property owner to the south has already submitted, and this was in your packet in December as well, in support
of the application before you tonight. So the tower itself is proposed to have 4 wireless provider locations and a community emergency response location on the top. So essentially 5 locations, and you can see the emergency response would be at the top, and then you see the 4 other locations for wireless equipment. Again, there's 3 currently on the ski jump tower. So this would provide 1 more wireless provider and that emergency response. One of the reasons that the council tabled the item in December was to ask staff to look into the need or desire from emergency response point of view on additional site location here. We did reach out to Ramsey County, who also then on their behalf reached out to Washington County, and both counties stated that they are not interested in this site. They do have other facilities within a 2-mile radius of this site, so again, they're not looking at this site at this time as to provide additional response or location of their equipment. So, this is where it kind of gets the complicated part of why the council is dealing with. Typically, in the past, when we've had communication towers, you have the applicant that says, we want the top, and then co-location can happen below that. Here you have a little different situation where you have a property owner building a tower and working to provide locations so for other providers, and that's where we get a little bit of that gray area of what is that appropriate height then, if there's not an emergency response agency that is indicating that they are interested in utilizing this tower. So on process, a little background there. Staff sent public hearing notices to property owners within 500 feet. The Planning Commission held and closed that hearing. There were no residents that came to that meeting to speak directly. Since that meeting, we've received 8 comments. Some of them are included in your staff report. There are also 5 additional ones that came out since your packet for this meeting was sent out. So we did print those out for the council's review and handed those out before the meeting. So those were 5 additional comments that staff received. CDRB and the Planning Commission reviewed this on November 21st of last year, did recommend approval. Again, mentioned the council reviewed it at their December 11th meeting and tabled it. We talked about checking with Ramsey County, and staff has also confirmed that there are no other towers proposed in the nearby other municipalities in this area. So that brings us to the meeting tonight. So on your cover page for this memo, your recommended actions looked a little different, so I want to dive into that a little bit. There's 3 different actions based on where the council wants to go in this for this project. The first one, approve as proposed. That would be motion A on page 165, and doing that would adopt the project, approve the project as proposed. Also adopts resolutions that are found on pages 172 and 176 for, again, conditional use permit, variances, and design review. A second option the council can take tonight is to deny the project as proposed, but approve with modifications. That's reflected in motion B on page 165. The resolution handed out before the meeting reflects what you could, if the council wanted to go in this direction. And I'll come back to option B here on the next slide, but there's just to dig into that a little bit more. And then third option, deny the project outright. Motion C on page 165, that adopts resolution on page 179. So I said I wanted to go back to the B option, and initially when the staff report went out, we intended that the council, if they wanted to go this direction, would modify one of the other resolutions and move forward with that. Upon further review, we decided to take the action of creating a separate resolution, so it makes it more streamlined for the council to review. This resolution that was handed out before the meeting to the council contains findings of fact to, again, deny the project as proposed, that 195-foot tower. The resolution also supports approval of a modified project as determined by the city council. So again, as the city council in their discussion tonight determines that either there's a different height that's appropriate or a different setback, that's where we would memorialize it within this resolution. The resolution also contains conditions of approval to guide the construction process then of said tower, just like approving the project outright in motion A. So the end of this resolution has all those typical construction-related type conditions that you would find in a resolution. So I just put it one more time, City Council determines tower height and setback, because that's really what tabling the item and bringing it back here tonight is doing, is the council is being asked to decide where it wants to go with this project. And I should just mention, in terms of what is commonly referred to as the 60-day rule, it's really the 120-day rule, and we're later this week at 120 days. So the council is compelled from that standpoint to make a decision tonight. So I'll put it back on the previous slide with the three options as that were outlined in the staff report. The applicant is present tonight if there's any questions from the council directed at them. And with that, staff can also stand for questions.
Okay, council members, let's try and ask Mr. Martin questions first. Does anyone have any questions for him? I have a question. If we were to revise the request for 195 feet down to what would be permitted currently, which is it 175 feet?
Mayor and council, so for a residential zoning district, it's 125 feet is the height limitation. Now, if we recall from December what the applicant stated, there's some interference with the ski jump that causes some concern. So that's really what led them to asking for this variance, and they went to the 195. Now, for other areas of the city that are commercial industrial, the city would limit that at 175.
175. And does that change if we were, I'll tell you that I'm inclined to deny the project as proposed, but approve with modifications. And so I'm trying to figure out what those modifications would look like. I guess I really appreciate staff looking into, is there a public purpose in terms of the upper level? It was at least suggested that Ramsey County or Washington County, and I know you checked with even Woodbury too, whether or not there would be an interest in putting up, equipment up there that would serve a public purpose. And I guess what concerns me is such a large variance when there is no public purpose. What there is an economic advantage to the applicant, but there isn't a public purpose for it. And it does, it's very different. I think I read in the documents that putting up 195 feet tower is the same as an 18-story building. And this is a residential neighborhood, that there is an impact. I understand that we've got, there were five people that wrote in that were in favor of it, and then another three, but that certainly isn't everybody in the community. This, I think it's going to impact many more people than that. So in terms of, if it was 175, does that change the setback at all? The 45 feet or whatever the...
Yeah, Mayor and Council, so the setback is height tower plus 25 feet. So the home is set back 175 feet from where the tower is proposed to locate. So they'd be looking at a 25-foot variance, that extra 25 feet. The applicant had proposed still that breakaway pole at that 50% mark. So again, you'd essentially be approving, if you went in that direction, a pole that equals the distance of the setback, but then they could potentially have that extra protection of that 50% breakaway. So it's still a 25-foot variance for the setback.
Okay, which is considerably less than what they were asking for. Okay. Council members, any other questions for Mr. Martin? Okay. Council members, is there an appetite to hear from the applicants? Okay. Would the applicant please come up to the microphone, please? Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Dale Ramses. I'm with VMC. I represent the Educational Foundation in this project. What were the questions?
I don't see any questions yet. Did you want to say something to us?
Oh, I thought you were asking for it. No, and the process here, and you have to understand, we wanted to be a steward for the community. We wanted to put something up that had availability for additional, not just taking care of what we have now for tenants and use. The emergency response portion of it, looking to date, we know that you can't, I knew that you're not going to get this answer. Things change, technology changes. 9/11 changed a lot of things. Armor Project changed a lot of things. Some of these projects will be 10 years in the makings. Our big goal that we wanted to focus on when we asked for that height in the top portion for emergency responses, the Educational Foundation ran into liability issues modifying a tower. And, you know, is it worth it? Is it safe to do it? Same thing with the communication tower. You don't want to modify its original. And so if we had that in place where it could be used for them, we're not tearing up ground and redoing a foundation and welding brackets onto an existing tower to accommodate that in the future use. So that was a good faith. It's there for the use of. There is no rent. We were not going to charge any rent to emergency response to it, so it wasn't a financial benefit. 175 is a very accommodating height that will do the needs for what we have proposed of four tenants. So that is a height that we would hope that you would consider. It allows us to have that room for one more, and falls within a lesser restriction of a variance.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant, council members? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for providing more information. You know, I'm curious to, what is the life of the current ski jump right now? Are there any plans in the near future, 5, 10, 20 years, to do our remodifications? Can you expand the current ski jump sideway or add to it instead of going up?
In regards to making a communication tower next to it?
Nope, I'm just curious to see if you would know more about.
The Educational Foundation is always consistently evaluating the structure and what they're doing. There will be some upgrades for future use as it sits. There's no plan for making any major modifications up or out at that foundation, or at that level of the ski jump. So it is a status quo, but maintain it and keep it safe and viable for the people that use it. Is that what you were looking for?
Is there like a life of the tower at all, or?
Indefinitely,
you know.
as long as it's maintained. I mean, they're replacing deck boards, they're doing fencing on it. The foundation itself, as long as it's the drainage kept away from it, and you know, the steel doesn't have any fail issues with it or heavy corrosion issues. It will be continued to be maintained and used as it is.
Just had another question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I was, one of my other question is, since our last conversation, today I did some door knocking in the area, just chatted with some neighbors in the area. One of the concerns that was brought up was there's a sign, I didn't see it myself, but a sign at the gate saying there's higher radiation wave in the area. If we were to put this pole in, does that increase the radiation in the area? I know you're going up now, but what does that look like?
So I'll first start out by saying the signs that you see are the FCC tells the carriers they have to put up there. The signs that you're seeing at the fence are by law wrong. At a secured location, they have to put that says from this point on within this property has RF emissions, but for the general public, it's safe. If it hits a tower, it would have a different label on it and say anybody trained in RF when exposure would need to be trained before they go on it. If there is a different sign that is red that says exceeding limits, that's the RF that you're talking about. That would be at that 175-foot level in front of the antennas. So your drone you wanted to fly the drone, didn't you? You did. Your drone could get it, but it'd be very hard for an individual to be at that level. Respectfully, they're putting up the wrong signs. But all sites should have a general public. It's a blue sign that says within this facility, RF signals are being emitted.
Just another follow-up.
You should see them on just about every tower in any buildings in downtown Minneapolis, St. Paul, but you seldom see them.
Thank you. Have you guys done any community engagement in the community at all in that area since our last conversation?
I would defer that to the president. Have you had any additional conversations? Oh.
So I'm going to defer to our vice president.
Would you like to stand up? We haven't signed in, is that all right?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. Just those additional 5 emails that came through is what we have talked to the people that we let use the facility. There's a couple of people that walk their dogs through that facility, and the gates are open, so they're not open, but a human can walk through the gates because they're kind of a Z gate. And just ask them to communicate to the council their approval of the project.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Cave.
And I had a question, I think it's for the gentleman with the, yes. Just had a question because my big concern is the height.
Okay.
Is there a way that you can operate it with 150 feet? Adding 25 to the existing tower instead of 50.
Not allowing an extra one.
So it doesn't allow the emergency management one, but if we,
Doesn't. And it
so if we
would-
did 150, it would be the 4. You
No.
just don't have the emergency man. or you
150
just-
would get us 1.5 height
Yep, so you just eliminate the emergency management at 150.
at 175.
Okay.
How is it that you're able, I just need a clarification. How is it that you're able to have, how tall is the tower right now?
The tower is at 100 feet.
Okay, and how
We're
is
gonna
it that
be
you're able to get 4 providers on that tower?
That's part of the issue. As the technology grew, you couldn't add that many and they would stack together. So their spacing and their quantity overloaded the tower, both spatially and structurally. So if you're looking at the tower, we're at 100 feet to the tower. We're slightly 30 feet back from it. We need to be at about 120 feet to get above that tower, so when they start broadcasting, the very bottom platform or bottom tenant starts broadcasting the signal, they aren't getting interference from the actual ski jump. Each tenant will take 15 feet of vertical space to propagate their signal from.
So the slide in front of us indicates that the 4 wireless providers would be at 125, 140, 155, and 170, is that correct?
That's correct.
Any other questions, Councilmember Cave? No, thank you. Councilmember Lee?
Yep. And with this monopole going in, will there still be any equipment on the ski unit
No.
itself?
It will be strictly whatever their education foundation has for safety and lighting.
Can you repeat that? It would be what?
Just whatever they have for safety, like guardrails, whatever, and lighting.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, then council members, let's have a discussion.
Thank you.
You can have a seat if something else comes up, we'll call you back. Council members, your thoughts? Is your light on?
Yeah.
Councilmember
Yep.
Cave?
My thought is the height completely, because it's just sitting out there by itself. It's already at 100 feet. And, I mean, 125 would be, adding 25 would make it even stand out more than it already is. I just don't see going to 175 feet. The height there, and then the fact that, we don't need it for emergency management, that piece has been removed. So I definitely am not for the height variance on this project.
Anyone else? Councilmember Lee?
Thank you. The height is also a concern of mine, and I appreciate the work that the organization does. And I door knocked the cul-de-sac right behind the property earlier today and a couple houses along the cul-de-sac there, and a lot of the concern was really around the height piece of it too. And it was not a all no, it was kind of a mixed bag, though I definitely want to say that, but I think a lot of it really is more, and it's not one of those, I don't want it in my backyard piece. But I think thinking about the big picture, it's going to impact a lot of people, not just right behind there, but all around in that community, in that area there. So the height piece of it is one of the issue for me too.
Okay. Your thoughts, Councilmember Villavicencio?
Yeah, I agree with the other two comments that were made. I have a real issue with the height. It's in a residential area. I just don't think it's appropriate for the community.
And Councilmember Juniman?
Height. That's the key word.
Okay. Then, council members, we have three different options. Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion recommending denial of the proposal.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Cave, the motion to deny adoption of the proposal. Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Cave?
It says we need some finding of facts, so do we need to mention why? Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. Beatty? That would be found on page 179?
Yes, Madam Mayor, you do, but they are embedded in the resolution.
Okay. Okay.
So is this the,
Not sure what you want.
this is the one that was in front of us?
Mayor and council, so if you're looking at motion C,
Yes.
you would turn to page 179, and that has that full denial
Okay,
resolution that includes the findings of fact.
so that should be reflected in the motion, that it's based on the
Okay.
resolution that's found on page 179, just for clarification.
It is not the one that you were handed.
Ben for B, okay. So, any further clarifications on that? We're voting on denying the project and adopting the denial based on page 179 of our council packet. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of denying it signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then, unfortunately, the project is denied. We have new business tonight, the last agenda item concerning Woodland Hills Church. Mr. Martin, this is your project as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. With our attention still on the overhead screen with the tempo slides here, we're looking at Woodland Hills Church located at 1740 Van Dyke Street. The applicant is proposing removing a portion of its parking lot north of the church building to create green space, plant additional trees, and provide outdoor space for visitors and a demonstration area, which we'll talk about here in a slide or two. If you look at the map to the right, the red boundary is the entire property of the church itself, and that blue polygon is where the parking lot work is isolated. And really, it's not more complicated than just converting parking to green space. But there is an existing conditional use permit for this site that locks in the amount of parking and the site plan. So to amend those two things, we do need to bring it through this process. So the applicant is requesting approval of conditional use permit amendment and design review. The church has been working with Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed to convert the 1.25 acres of parking lot area into, again, data planning, stormwater ponding, and a demonstration area for tiny homes. The site is guided and zoned by the city's comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance as mixed use. Places of worship are allowed in any zoning district with a conditional use permit, and Woodland Hills received their initial approval in 2000. So the church is proposing to eliminate 218 parking spaces, again, north of its building. The site currently has a total of 859 spaces. They're required a total of just 325. So even with the reduction, they're still well above what that code requirement is. And if you were able to read the applicant's narrative, they talk about how they're providing their services on Sundays, namely, has changed with how many people are actually coming in person versus online viewing. So if there's more questions about that, the applicant can speak to that. But again, in addition to the green improvements we already talked about, the church is working with a nonprofit called Settle, which places tiny homes at churches. And so relates to the sacred settlements ordinance that the city adopted at the end of last year, which was a reaction or compelled by the state passing the legislation about, again, the sacred communities, the tiny homes, working to address issues related to unhoused individuals. So the applicant has stated that there are no plans at this time to occupy the tiny homes on this site at Woodland Hills. And again, will just be used as a demonstration project, which quite frankly, they've been doing already for a handful of years, where they've been constructing the homes and showing them how they can be situated in the site. And so that they're gonna formalize that arrangement more so to speak. Part of the landscaping plan for the project, they're gonna plant 17 new trees throughout this site, again, where parking lot currently exists. Remainder of the site will be planted with prairie seed mix. The applicant's been working with the watershed and city environmental staff to meet all of the two agencies' requirements. And it should be noted, again, the big goal of why the watershed's involved with this and the city engineering review of this is that the staff has indicated it will have a positive impact on nearby Wakefield Lake with reducing the amount of impervious surface in this general area. Staff did send public hearing notices to 95 properties within 500 feet. No comments were received due to that notice mailing. 3 residents did speak at the Planning Commission's public hearing. Really, those residents, if you had a chance to review that meeting, the residents were concerned, had some concerns potentially about sacred settlements and potentially coming to the Woodland Hills Church at some point. There are other concerns about just activity on the parking lot throughout the year. Staff did review police calls, and you can see such things as individuals meeting there or using the parking lot to race remote control cars. So some of these things, by actually reducing the parking lot and focusing the activity to the front of the building, would help some of those issues. I know there was also a concern with maintaining stairs that are in place from the neighborhood to the east to be able to access the shops on Lavender. At this time, the applicant has indicated that anything would change there. The stairs would remain. So on that same evening as the public hearing, the CDRB and Planning Commission did recommend approval of the project. And with that, staff is also recommending approval, with the conditions noted in their packet. The applicant is here to answer the questions from the council, and staff can also stand for questions.
Council members, do you have any questions for Mr. Martin? Councilmember Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question on I see that the property itself, the alleyway behind the building goes all the way through. You could drive right through the parking lot if you were in the back. Are they cutting off is that going to come to a dead end then?
Mayor and council, sorry for my bouncing around here. So this image, this is directly north of the building. So where you see gray as opposed to the white, that's where asphalt or hard surface will remain. So there is
They will keep that,
essentially,
okay.
From a public safety and city standpoint, we were concerned about fire access and being able to access the building. So yes, there still will be a drive lane to the north, directly north of the building that you would get to the east side of the building.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that, so. Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Juniman?
Again, to verify, the applicant is totally aware of and working with both the watershed and our environmental staff, correct?
Mayor and council, correct. And there's been lots of conversations already, and the applicant would have a better sense of this, but they've been working with the watershed not for weeks or months, but years to get to this point.
What's
the
not to like
applicant-
about replacing blacktop?
You do, you're the applicant. Do you want to come up to the DS, please? Can answer any questions. And I have to say, you have a very large parking lot.
We do have a very large parking lot.
The more do we need?
Yeah.
Can I say at the very beginning, congratulations to Melinda for your retirement. And it says a lot, I think. I mean, you hear a lot of crying going on at city council meetings these days, but not because someone's so grateful for having served for 21 years. And that says a lot. I mean, that says volumes. And so whatever you're doing, keeping it up. I mean, keep it up. That's really, it's commendable. But yeah, we've got more parking space than we need. That north end is not only, it's unnecessary, but it's also been a pain. It freezes, it causes frost, heist, whatever it's called.
Frost heave.
Yeah, heave. And expensive to maintain. And we're always, want to be good stewards of money. And our vision of our church is that, conviction is that faith has got to translate into action. And the action it translates into has got to be serving the community and taking care of the planet, which was, in our view, the first mandate that God gave us. Another thing, by the way, that I want to commend the City Council on your environmental concern and pushing for composting and all of that. I really commend you for that. So what we'd like to do is do something that we think is both good for the planet and for the community, and that's take this asphalt and turn it into a rain garden. The secondary purpose is have a display of the tiny homes. And that is a really beautiful vision that has just been out for the last 4 or 5 years. It was birthed out of the University of Minnesota think tank on solving problems of homelessness. This one person had this vision of like what would happen if churches who have got extra space would partner together and create these tiny homes and house communities there and welcome these communities in there. And she was able to show that for a fraction of the cost that we currently spend on getting someone off the street into sustainable housing, you could do that in these tiny homes. Our location isn't ideal for that, but we're partnering with other churches to build these homes and find locations for them. So there's one that's now on Lake Phelan with the Church Mosaic Church. And so we're not looking to house this, but we are a visible church, and we want to be promoting this and putting on display. And so it will serve this greater vision about solving homelessness as well as providing an environmentally improvement over the asphalt that we have currently.
I had the benefit of touring the tiny homes on your lot and then seeing the video and then doing a question and answer session. And it was a few years ago, but I was very impressed with the tiny homes. And I have to say that our faith community was actually very interested. The city did a presentation with our faith community, and it was about the new law, the Sacred Settlement Law. And some of our faith community is really interested in that too. I don't recall that you've ever come to the meetings with our faith community, but some people did express some interest in how could they partner and how could they get involved. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day.
Well, we're all about networking, and we'd love to have the conversation. We worked with 6 other churches to produce the home that was on Lake Phelan. And that itself is a good, to have, get out of our own little silos and start networking together.
Right.
So we'd love to have the conversation.
Right. Council members, any other questions for the applicant? Councilmember Lee.
Just a comment. It's so good to just see green space coming in to parking lot. We need more of that in the city of Maplewood.
That's great.
Yeah.
And like I said, you have a very large parking lot. But I think that goes back to, it used to be a store.
Yeah.
Way back it was.
Way back when.
It was a big box store way, but Shopper City.
Shopper City, okay. Yeah. Days gone by. So, council members, we have 2 motions. Would someone like to make one of the first motion?
I will motion to approve a conditional use permit amendment resolution for parking lot and site improvements to be constructed at 1740 Van Dyke Street.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve a conditional use permit resolution for parking lot and site improvements to be constructed at 1740 Van Dyke Street. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Our second motion, would someone make that?
I move to approve a design review resolution for parking lot and site improvements to be constructed at 1740 Van Dyke Street.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Villavicencio, the motion to approve a design review resolution for parking lot and site improvements to be constructed at 1740 Van Dyke Street. Is there any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you and congratulations.
Let's hear it for green space.
You might be able to get started earlier than you think if we continue with this warm weather. Thank you. All right, moving on, we have our last agenda item, the resolution ordering the abatement of hazardous building and public nuisance conditions at 1830 Howard Street North. Ms. Parr, this is your presentation?
That is correct, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We also have our city attorney, Ron Beatty, here to help out with this one if there are questions that need to be addressed. This action before you this evening is to consider adopting a resolution ordering for the abatement of a hazardous building and public nuisance conditions that reside at 1830 Howard Street North. The site is located north of Ripley Avenue East, south of Holloway Avenue East, west of McKnight Road, and it's on the east side of Howard Street. The property has been in decline over multiple years with increased complaints. As the council knows, we don't bring these before you unless there's no other way in working with staff that we can move this forward on our own. We've been before you not that long ago with another similar situation. This one in particular, the person that is the property owner, we haven't been able to contact them. And so it's not so much that they're evading trying to work with us, they're unable to work with us from our understanding. So that's why we're bringing it before you tonight, because time has passed and it's continued to be a problem for the neighborhood, and now it's become a safety issue in our opinion. So we want to share it with you and get your feedback on it. We have had complaints over the years in relation to overgrown weeds, grass, dead trees, the deteriorated condition of the house, and also just the debris and so forth in the yard of items. It's one of those when you drive by it, and I've driven by it in the year I've worked here, and it has gotten worse, but you don't necessarily know it when you look at it. It's not that obvious because it's kind of covered with brush. It's got some stuff going on that kind of help conceal it. Now with snow, you can see the holes in the roof a little bit more, and it's becoming more obvious. And when I show you the pictures, which you saw in your packet, it's clear that it needs help. We have made numerous attempts to contact the property owner, as I said, without success. The site is clearly not occupied as well. After receiving an administrative warrant to enter the site, at the beginning of January, our building official and one of our building inspector staff went out to the site. They went in and executed the search warrant. They couldn't see the entire interior of the building. The upstairs and the basement are not safely accessible. As you move to the rear of the building, it becomes more hazardous. And so they did not proceed to see all those other spaces, but they're clearly probably worse than the spaces you see in the pictures. So they did a great job pulling together the information so they could present to you what they saw when they were there. After having seen the photos and having talked to them and been to the site, staff as well as our city attorney believe that it is in fact a hazardous site. It's unsafe and it's a public nuisance, and that we need to, as a city, get involved at this point. I'm just going to show the pictures because I think they tell the story better than the report in some ways. There's a lot more detail in your packet, but I'm just going to show you the pictures because I think it really does portray the facts there. As you can see on the exterior, there are a number of holes throughout the roof. You can kind of start to see some of the other decay that's impacting some of what should be load-bearing walls. Towards the bottom middle picture, you see what you're looking through a window there. That's actually a wall falling into the structure, which I think is pretty revealing. You can also see on the right-hand corner there, that's the same picture, just further out. You can see what should be a load-bearing wall is actually compromised now, and the exterior is actually leaning, and we're going to see the roof probably fall in before too long. This is the front living room. As you can see, the ceiling has fallen, but the bigger issue is probably the joists that show rot. Obviously, when you walk in, the odor, just the mildew, the mold is very obvious the minute you walk in. Here's the kitchen. This is one of the bigger holes in the roof, and you can see in the top left-hand that the large hole that's proceeding into the kitchen. What's on the outside is in the inside as well, as you can see. Here is a bedroom on the first floor. We believe there's more bedrooms upstairs, but we couldn't access those. You can see here just the amount of deterioration in the space. And this is as you leave the bedroom and you head to the back of the house, this is where the floor starts slanting, and you get that slope going to the back wall, which is sloping as well, which is pretty dangerous, so they exited at that point. They couldn't get to the basement, but the basement foundation wall has a hole in it, so they could get these photos from the exterior looking in, which I think speaks for itself. You can see on the bottom left-hand picture, the upper floor is actually collapsing in on the floor. You can see on the right-hand side, the joists are rotted there, and they're probably going to give way before too long. Here's the exterior. These are just a mixture of pictures that show just the debris in general, the dead trees piled up in some spots. You'll see in the top right-hand side, there's a car that is, it's kind of hard to see, but it's there. It isn't licensed. We're assuming it's not operable, but that, along with the other debris, needs to be addressed as well. I can walk through the conditions that were listed, but I think it's easier just to tell you they basically have two options. If the city council authorizes the staff and the city attorney to move forward, the owner will be served an order that requires abatement within 45 days. They can either choose to raise or demolish and clean up the property, or they can do a series of repairs and replace, and I won't go through those unless you want me to, but there's a fair amount of it. Basically brings it up to code. I don't know that that's cost-effective or even possible, quite frankly, but we always give people options. And so I won't walk through those unless you'd like me to. If the owner fails to comply with the order, the city will initiate formal proceedings to request a court order authorizing the city to abate the hazardous building and the public nuisance conditions of the property, which we've had to do before. The statutory and city code provisions authorizing the abatement proceedings also allow us to recover costs for enforcement, as well as to assess the special assessment on the property in order to incur the costs that we take on to clean this up. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I know Mr. Beatty's here to answer questions as well. I'll turn it over to the council.
Thank you very much for taking these actions. This looks like a very disturbing property and one that is very unsafe in our community. Council members, do you have any questions? Councilmember Lee?
Just a comment, and to the car that you talked about earlier, the tag on the car says 2009, so it's been years since that car has been touched. So neighbors share that there's critter that are in and out of there all day. It's definitely a property that's due for a removal.
Yeah. Would someone like to make the motion, please?
I move to approve the resolution ordering the abatement of hazardous building and public nuisance conditions at 1830 Howard Street North.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Lee. The motion to approve the resolution ordering the abatement of hazardous building and public nuisance conditions at 1830 Howard Street North. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. And very appropriately, our last item, we did make a motion for the city manager resolution, but we didn't take a vote.
That means we don't
Thanks
want
to our
to leave-
Cracker Jack. We don't want to leave you hanging. We want to wrap it up. We want to wrap it up as our very last item. It's just an oversight. It was the emotion of the moment. I made the motion, and I believe Councilmember Juniman seconded it. We just haven't taken a vote. So is there any further discussion concerning the resolution for our city manager? Okay, hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. And with that, Melinda, would you like to have the closing words before we adjourn?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
You've had enough? Okay.
We'll have another opportunity for words later.
Yes, yes. Thank you, everyone, and good night. We're adjourned.